At some point, you may have heard of Maslow's hierarchy, or Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The ways that, as human beings, we have all kinds of needs, but they're kind of stacked. And sometimes we have to address needs lower on the stack before we can even become aware of some of our needs higher up the stack. Well, it's definitely anachronistic to think that Jesus is using a model like Maslow's. But there is very much a progression or a stack that Jesus is moving us through in something as simple as the Lord's Prayer.
Because it's almost like in 64 short words, Jesus is walking us from our very first trusting steps all the way to what could be a final form. And maybe when I say that makes you think Pokemon, but for me, what it makes me think of is Maslow's hierarchy. Now, even if you're not familiar with Maslow, as human beings, we all have this recognition that we have physical needs, right? Daily bread, food, water, shelter, anything it takes to survive. And all of that at some level has to be taken care of before we can even begin to think about or address our needs for safety or personal space or even really look after our own health. So safety, as important as it is, comes second, but even those needs have to be met before we can properly think about love and relationships. We need acceptance and belonging before we can think about self-respect and esteem. We need that kind of confidence before we can self-actualize and begin to dream about what we want to accomplish or contribute to the world around us. All these things build on each other. They open us up to new needs, but also they make possible new growth, new imaginations for us. Now, it's entirely anachronistic to think that Jesus is playing by Maslow's rules. That's not what I'm talking about here. But it also appears to me that Jesus is moving us through some kind of progression, a hierarchy in some sense. And for Jesus, it all starts with our imagination of the divine. Who is God? What is God like? Can I trust that God? And so we learn to pray to our Father, who loves all of us, whose kingdom is good and on its way toward us. And that allows us to shape and reorient our view of what we actually need in the world. There are very real needs, for example, daily bread, but also shelter and safety and community and interdependence that grounds our existence as human beings. And so we learn to pray for everything we need and nothing more, so that all of the siblings we met in our Father might find what they need as well. Which then leads us to think about relationships, the spaces we've been hurt by those siblings, the things that we hold on to for too long, the times maybe we've let each other down. How something as basic as daily bread requires our interdependence and therefore demands that we enter some kind of ongoing practice of forgiveness. And how that learning to let go, that fundamental resetting of our imagination of what is possible between us, then invites us to reimagine what is possible for everything. Everything about how we're welcomed into this world, everything about how we view this world around us, that evil is not inevitable. That our worst tendencies do not have to win the day. That we can be delivered from all of it because we can slowly learn to overcome the temptation to stay where we are and not grow and not become something more healthy and mature. Which then beautifully leads us all the way back to praying in ways that remind us about God's goodness. Goodness expressed in family, goodness expressed in bread, goodness made real in forgiveness, goodness enacted in our desire to slowly be shifted toward what is true.